took me 11 months to the date to finish reading Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. I bought Matthew Perry's memoir on the 30th of October, 2023. That was 2 days after his passing, which is hard to believe it's been almost a year. And I finished reading it last night, which was the 30th of September, so 11 months. And the reason it took so long is not because it's badly written, quite the contrary. It's actually so emotional, so honest, that it was very difficult to read because, particularly in the beginning, I would just cry through the entire thing. I was basically reading a chapter a week at most. And then over the last 2 weeks or so, I made an effort to read one chapter a night, which honestly was about as much as I could handle. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was a wreck, as I imagine a lot of people will be. Part of me wishes I'd read it before he died. It might not have been quite as emotional. There's one moment in the book, and I will talk about what the book explains or what it goes into in a moment, but there's one moment in the book, and this is, I guess, a tiny spoiler for something, but it's not really a spoiler. I don't know if you could spoil a memoir, really, but he was told by his doctor, because of something, I won't say what it is, but if he didn't change something, and it's not his drug addiction, but if he didn't change something else, he would not make it to 60. And the fact that he didn't make it to 60 is just, it's emotional. It's very difficult to read, but it's so worth it. And Matthew Perry wanted his legacy to be the work he did for helping people with addiction. And this book really takes a step in that direction. It's basically about his struggle with drugs, how this came about, and the stories are, of course, intertwined with stories from Friends and other projects that he worked on. There are a lot of Friends stories in this one, even when we're out of the time period in his life chronologically, and I'll talk about the structure of the memoir in a moment, but when we're out of the time period chronologically, he still does mention Friends every now and then, when it feels relevant. It never feels forced or anything, but if you're reading this, let's say you're a Friends fan, but you've got no interest in his other films or other projects, there's enough Friends in this throughout it that you'll still find that aspect of it to be interesting and, I guess, relatable. If you've seen the show, you'll be able to connect with what he's saying. I've seen quite a few of his other projects. There were a couple of films he mentioned in this that I haven't seen yet, and it was obviously still easy to follow what he was talking about, and he never goes into a tremendous amount of detail about any one film or anything. So if you haven't seen X or Y film, it doesn't matter. You can still follow this. And the bit that's really, well, the most difficult part is at the beginning when he is talking so vividly. I won't say exactly what it is, as I don't want to spoil it in case you're not familiar, but something happens, a medical emergency where basically he could have died. And the detail is terrifying. And to think he went through that, not just that, but so many other things that he details in the memoir, it's so difficult to read, but I have nothing but praise and gratitude for Matthew Perry's honesty. He is so vulnerable throughout this, and that's so beautiful to see, because he was willing to share these vulnerable moments, I assume, to help other people, either people who are going through something similar, partly so they're not alone, but also so they know the dangers of what could be around the corner for them. And also, if anybody is a family member or friend of somebody going through that, I think it provides a very honest account of what the experience is like for them. And it's wonderfully written. The structure is brilliant. We kind of start off very medical heavy at the beginning, and then we go to the beginning of his career, and then obviously we get to Friends, and there is a good chunk focused on Friends and a lot of stories about each of the other cast members and how they helped him. There's a lot of great stuff there about Jennifer Aniston in particular. We look at some of his relationships, and obviously there's pretty much always, and this makes perfect sense, the drugs are basically always there. Even when he's talking about something else, such as a relationship, the drugs are there. And that's because they were always there in his life from a certain point. and it's a very honest account, and I have nothing but, as I said, nothing but gratitude for the honesty, the vulnerability, and how raw this is. It's very well written and um emotional. It's as I said, I kind of wish I'd read it before he died. I always meant to, but I was definitely hesitant because I had a feeling it would be an emotional read, and putting it off meant that it was even more emotional, maybe more powerful, but a lot more emotional. I did. I basically cried through the whole thing. I don't think I ever read more than one chapter in one sitting. As I said, for the past 2 weeks or so, I made the effort to read a chapter a night. Some chapters are shorter than others, but generally they're roughly the same length. But before that, it was a chapter maybe every couple of weeks, maybe once a month at one point, because it's brutal. It's worth it though. If you are a Matthew Perry fan, if you feel like the topics addressed in this are something that could benefit you, it is completely worth reading. And obviously, it's not always going to be something everybody's going to be comfortable with reading, but I'd say it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. It took me 11 months to read, but I'm glad I finally got through it. Also, there are some fun photographs in this. Even on the Kindle version, they're right at the end on the Kindle version, and we have a foreword by Lisa Kudrow, which is pretty cool. So very well written, really honest, really brutal, absolutely worth reading. But Friends, Lovers, and Big Terrible Thing is not an easy read. But I think Matthew Perry has left behind an incredible legacy in more ways than one. And this book goes some way to help show how that's the case. Definitely worth reading, but it definitely isn't easy.